Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
The mysticism, this is the beginning of all spirituality. This is where I've called it the underground river, because it actually is the river of truth that feeds all world religions. Religions are simply man-made institutions of ways of delivering, of teaching, of organizing, of sort of keeping us in practice and on a path. And there's a lot of left brain that goes into religion and religious practice, which doesn't take away at all its importance or its power. But every bit of it that has transforming power is fed by this underground river of truth, of universal truth. And it is what Unity has really tapped into with greater, I think with a great sense of purity in understanding that we are all the exploring edge of that river, that it isn't all known and all done, and it's not all written down in big dusty books somewhere. It is living truth. And we are each and every one of us redefining it, understanding it, discovering it, and applying it in our lives. And that's what we do together. And we teach one another by our world, by our lives and how we do it and how we live in the world. And so world religions really do tap into this. They arose out of this because not all truths, however, that are expressed in all traditions or interpreted alike. They share commonalities, but different cultures, different time frames, different perspectives at different times all make it a wonderful, multifaceted approach to an idea or to the way in which we relate to what is greater than us, whatever name we use, whatever we call it. Our unity principles are drawn from many of the truths by our co-founders, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, in their study of world religion before they founded Unity. They were Christian, they were Bible students, but they wanted to understand the larger sense of the truth, and they began to perceive that Jesus was teaching something else than perhaps what the doctrines in the Christian church was telling them or limiting them to. They were feeling and sensing that there was a universal truth that Jesus was tapping into. And they began to accept a greater opening in understanding what it was how Jesus' relationship with God also means that we have that same relationship with God. And in knowing that, everything shifts. Everything changes. Today we explore that common human spiritual experience and drink from the living water of mysticism. So first I want to tell you that spirituality is natural. It isn't something that you have to go to school for. I thought that because that's how I was introduced to spirituality and to God and that sort of thing. But the truth is, I was dazzled by the way the wind moved through the trees as a child. I was dazzled by the intricacy of small little crawly things on the ground. I was dazzled by the sunsets and the stars at night and the fact that they could fall from the sky in such amazing ways. I was dazzled by things that were greater than me that I didn't understand, but I was lost in. And so have you, I know, experienced so many things in your life that you know in an instant that you're being held, that you're being loved, that you're being fed, and that you are precious. and you are known. Spontaneous spiritual experiences are also natural. They aren't for select special people or people whose souls are necessarily destined to start religions or whatever. Very often they've started that way. But spiritual experiences are part of our human spiritual experiences as human beings. They're not only accepted, but they're expected in many world religions, and there are patterns of models in different world religions for making space for that, for helping to invoke that by certain ceremonies and certain ways of preparing oneself, certain practices, certain disciplines one uses. Meditation, of course, is a beautiful path for opening ourselves to a deeper understanding. Spiritual practice on an ongoing basis opens us to the likelihood of an awareness and sensitivity to our world from an internal understanding, not just an intellectual left brain understanding. And so, as wonderful as our minds are, we were not meant to live there. Should I say that again? As wonderful as our minds are, we were not meant to live here. We were meant to live here. And this is the organ of intelligence that really helps us to feel what it is that's true. And that underground river runs right through here. It runs right through here, and it is your ability to perceive what is deeply true. Whether you hear it from someone else, whether you have been taught it or read about it, you know, and you can feel this truth in yourself. And as you speak it, honestly, others feel it too. There's a resonance. Just like the tuning fork, vibrates the piano chord in just that way, right? We all are attuned to the truth. Spiritual awakening comes with subtle and not so subtle energetic changes in the body, and they're a part of the understanding that is modeled in many world traditions. Our religious doctrine has codified a lot of the morality teachings, of the Ten Commandments, for instance. In Judeo-Christian understanding, the Ten Commandments are our ways of behaving. They are our ways of understanding what our relationship should be, how to be right and to be right and not wrong, good and not bad, right? And so that is a necessary part of our development as spiritual beings, as human beings, and important. And we do that as we grow, but it is not the end-all be-all. It is a setting for us in our early lives of how to navigate and how to be. But after that, the ethical understanding and teaching, the ways in which we have to navigate the gray areas of our lives, and we know that painfully. We're painfully aware now because of the polarization that charges certain words even, that we can't even have a conversation and use a word casually without it suddenly separating the two of us across the room from each other. That's not how we were made, and it's not the truth. It's a construct that we can move past, we must move past, we are moving past, because we are more than this. And because we have the capacity to understand that it is our heart that will tell us the truth, not a meme on Facebook. Let me just tell you that. Christian mystics, before the age of the Enlightenment, used doctrine and sacraments that they were taught in the Christian church as a context for their spiritual experiences. And those doctrines are morality based. And so it was good, bad, it was God or devil, it was, there was terror and fear also that accompanied some of the early Christians' experiences, because that was the context they have, because they didn't have a model. Jesus, unfortunately, should have been our model, but instead, in some ways, Jesus was made so special and so uniquely made that we couldn't identify with him at all, that we couldn't understand that what Jesus woke up to in himself to teach was exactly the message we needed to have to wake up to the love and to the Christ that is within us. And it was our co-founders in Unity who aligned, even after studying all world religions. They didn't decide to become Buddhists, and they didn't decide to become Hindus. They remained connected to their relationship with Jesus and saw him as their way shower, as their model, and continued to study the metaphysical, with a metaphysical understanding of the Bible, and to reinterpret those stories in a way that brought it home into a living experience for themselves. And they share it with us. So what is mystical experience exactly? Well, first of all, it is ineffable. That means you can't use words to describe it. It's because it's such a surprise, it's such an experience that it's hard to put into words. For me to say, I stepped outside and suddenly the sun just seemed brighter. And in Houston, Texas, you'd say, yeah, I know. It is so hot out here, right? It's like, yes. But no, it's not just brighter. There's an otherworldly quality that it seemed like the light was coming from the flowers and from the leaves, not on them. An ineffable, hard to explain experience that others may not understand. It is noetic, meaning along with it comes knowledge, comes an awareness, comes some bit of truth, comes suddenly one sees how everything fits together. Suddenly someone sees what this is meant for. Suddenly sees what is deeply true about this, or about me, or about all of us. And knowledge that just comes, that isn't necessarily read anyplace else or found anyplace else. But you know deeply inside of yourself it's true. And it doesn't matter to you. Here's another measurement. Another measurement is that when you know a truth that you feel deeply in your heart, you can share it with others, but you have no investment in them accepting it. It is not your job now to run around and tell the whole world what you know about this, unless they want to know or whether they see it that way too. It isn't important, and it isn't important to you that they understand that, because you know what you know, and you're content with that, and that is enough. And you are also compassionate enough to allow people to follow and find their own way. The mystical experience includes a transiency, meaning that it has a start and an end. It isn't very often, in fact, I would say almost never, the opportunity that somebody has a mystical experience and then lives forever in that space. It is a transient thing. It's usually only sometimes a few moments, maybe a couple of minutes, maybe a couple of hours, in very rare occasions, a couple of days or more. But inevitably, they come back to the everyday, ordinary experience again. However, they have changed. Talk about that in a minute. Passivity. It is not something that you can create for yourself. You can set up conditions. I mentioned that before. You can play gongs. You can light incense. You can light candles. You can have spiritual discipline. You can do all kinds of different practices along the way to heighten your sensitivity and to deepen your awareness and to become more and more still and more capable of being in a stillness That is very, very helpful. But you cannot make a mystical experience happen, and you can't recreate it, even once you've had one. There's a sense of being pulled up, of being taken over, of something suddenly occurring in your life. And so this passivity is another feature of the mystical experience. It always leads to a consciousness of the oneness of everything. Suddenly you don't feel separate from everything. Instead, your boundaries have disappeared or dissolved. You are suddenly, wow, part of everything, and you feel the pulse of the universe. You smell the air of the breath of life all around you. You suddenly know that you are embedded in something amazing and beautiful. The oneness of everything. A sense of timelessness also, meaning that you may not know how long you were in this experience. It might only be a couple of minutes clock time in this world. But when you're in it, it is forever. It is eternal. It's a moment in time, outside of time, because it is. And no matter how long you were there, it doesn't limit how much information or how much impact can happen. So there is that sense of timelessness in these experiences. And finally, you sense that the personality or ego is not the real you. In other words, this avatar, Karen, personality, a penchant for earrings and necklaces and that sort of thing, you know, that personality, that ego, that part of us is not our soul. It's how our soul is expressing through in this lifetime. And it's a lot of fun, you know, it can be fun. It also gets us into a lot of trouble, we know that. But it's our tool for teaching and it's our tool for navigating. But don't be confused that you are limited to that, or that that's all you can be this lifetime, or that that's all you are. It is what you are using to be all you are. You see that? So that's a mystical experience. And I want to say that that list does not involve the appearance of a deity or a divine being. Now, that doesn't mean one might not occur in a mystical experience. Jesus appeared to me and told me some things. And Mother Mary came to me in a dream or in a vision. I had a mystical experience. And some of the qualities that I just listed will define it as that experience. But it isn't necessary that one have a deity or divine being necessarily attached to it. It just matters that whatever it is that we receive, we really allow to change us and to teach us and to show us the way. A spontaneous mystical experience I just described, or a near-death experience. I'm going to just muddy the water with that real fast, but here it is. A near-death experience is really just another peek across the veil, another way that we get taken out of this experience into another one, and has many of the hallmarks I just described. But in addition, the near-death experience or a mystical experience is marked, it creates a marked change in the person by the experience. In other words, after that happens in your life, you tend to describe your life as before my near-death experience, after my near-death experience. Before, I had a vision or a dream. Before that happened, I felt this, now this. So it's a way of demarking one's life. Often personality changes toward more peaceful states occurs, more easygoing, more go with the flow, a little bit friendlier and a little bit more easy to laugh perhaps than they might have been before. It's often characterized by a loss of fear of death. In fact, I would say almost always that fear of death goes away because suddenly one has seen sort of the other side and knows what it is like. And in fact, as you've heard, I'm sure, countless times, if they've had an experience, they want to go back. They didn't want necessarily to come back here where it's a lot harder. And so these are some of the things, features that help us to know this is an authentic thing. This is something that can just happen out of nowhere. That's why I say it's natural. That's why I tell you that it's part of our human spirituality to know that we are connected. It isn't just something I have to teach you. It's something you intuitively know deep in your heart. The person who has one of these experiences can also acquire new perceptions or sensitivities, psychic abilities sometimes, or understandings, and spontaneous healings can occur. I've known several people personally for whom that has happened, where they were terminal. One I know was a friend of mine in ministerial school who was literally on her deathbed. She was in the hospital. She had a chart like this from at least 3 or 4 different bouts of cancer in her life, and this was the end. And she had a few hours left, and her sister came and whispered in her ear that she could let go. And she decided she would do that. And instead of passing over, she began to get better. I don't know why. I don't know how that happens. That was her path. That was what her soul needed in that moment. And so recognize that healings are really just another example of how it is that when we become more aligned with our purpose and more aligned with who we are and more willing to really live full out, our body will cooperate with us. Or it will leave us, drop away and let us move to the other side where we can do maybe greater things than we could have done in this lifetime. That happens too. Jesus' spiritual experience is documented in the Bible as the time of his baptism. He had a spiritual experience because he saw a dove come down and a voice from heaven say, "This is my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased." It's documented in the Bible as a way that everyone around him heard it. But in 1 or 2 of the accounts, it's really just his experience. He had a spiritual experience. He awoke to knowing he was the Son of God. And then he goes out into the desert for 40 days of fasting and experiences temptations. In other words, he had a before and after, didn't he? He actually had a moment where he suddenly knew something was true about him that he didn't know what to do with, and he had to go out and work it out in the only way he knew, to be alone, to be fasting, to be in silence, to be in meditation, to open himself to understanding. And when he returned, he came back with clarity and purpose. He knew what he was here to do, and the gifts he'd probably already been demonstrating had purpose, had focus. He is our model. He is our way shower. He is the one who legitimizes spiritual experience for us. Meister Eckhart, 14th century Christian mystic, during the age of the Enlightenment, when things were starting to open up, where other ways of perceiving truth through scientific methods were being used, we were searching as a consciousness, as humans, trying to understand our world better than just by what we were taught or told by others. And Meister Eckhart applied this somewhat to his own experience. And in one of his sermons, he said, "What good is it to me if this eternal birth of the divine Son takes place unceasingly, but does not take place within myself? And what good is it to me if Mary is full of grace, and if I am not also full of grace? What good is it to me for the Creator to give birth to his or her Son if I do not also give birth to him in my time and my culture? This, then, is the fullness of time, when the Son of God is begotten in us. Spiritual practice and commitment to make changes within oneself over time can yield some of the benefits of spontaneous mystical experience or near-death experience. I am such a person. I don't see things. I am the biggest tower of chopped liver you could possibly see in the spiritual la-la world. I don't see things. I don't see people. I don't see colors. During meditation, I have begged for some of that. It's like, please, let me have some, whiz-bang experience. But no. So what I'll tell you is that over time, the practice and the dedication, the commitment, and the shape of my soul has led me into practices and experiences that has allowed me to experience some of the things of a mystical experience, but not all at once. A little here, a little there, a sensitivity and awareness. I get it. I get what it feels like. I understand. But it didn't happen to me all at once. It happened to me over the span of 25 years of moving in that direction. Perhaps my whole life of practice. Yours too. So you're not out in the cold just because you don't have some dazzling story to tell. Your life is your dazzling story. How you live it, what you do to connect yourself with love and peace and fairness and justice in the world. That's your legacy. There is the practice of altered states such as meditation and shamanic ceremony and drumming and sounding gongs, ingestion of psychotropic substances. All of these things can elicit sometimes an experience or an understanding or a vision or a knowing, a change of emotional states. All of these things can help elicit that, but only because, just what I said from the beginning, our spiritual life is natural. And so what refreshes our spirits? Nature. That is the fastest thing I know to get out of my head and into my heart, to get outside. I don't care what the temperature is. Well, I kind of do, but I'll go prepared for it. Arts, music, energy and body work, reading inspirational or sacred writings, all of these things. The Lama Willoughby Miller Buddhist says, this world with all its beauty and all its vibrancy is just so because it is not fixed, because everything is contingent. Everything is connected. Oliver Sacks, a neurologist and an author, said, my religion is nature, he said. That's what arouses those feelings of wonder and mysticism and gratitude in me. Yes. Doesn't it? Deng Ming Dao, Taoist, author, martial artist, said, in nature, there is no alienation. Everything belongs. Everything. There's a story I want to share with you very quickly. This comes from Kitchen Table Wisdom. This is Stories That Heal, Rachel Naomi Riemann. She was talking with a young woman who's Jewish, a secular Jew. She had not practiced it in her life, but she married a man who practiced kosher, keeping kosher over Passover. And so what he taught her to do, something she'd never done, was the separation of the milk dishes from the meat dishes. That means forks, knives, spoons, cooking pots, plates, everything. Nothing could touch. In fact, in many traditional Jewish homes, they actually have two sinks, one for the meat plates, one for the milk plates. They have two dishwashers, which I think is awesome. But two dishwashers, one for the meat dishes, one for the milk dishes. And so she was trying to prepare and was very, very nervous about how to accomplish all of these different sets of things that had to be done. All of this almost overwhelmed her. Rachel, she said, you've never seen so many dishes, pots, knives, and forks, and pancake turners. It all seemed really pointless to me, but it was so terribly important to Herbert. And I was terrified of making a mistake and ruining things for him. But a really strange thing happened. Sometime in the middle of setting up things, I was standing by myself in the kitchen with my arms filled with the everyday milk dishes, looking around me desperately for some shelf room to be able to steal them away. Every shelf was full, and I remember thinking, where am I going to put these daily milk dishes? And suddenly, I wasn't alone. I had a very real sense of the presence of the many women who had ever asked themselves this very ordinary question. Thousands and thousands of them, some young, some old, in tents, in villages, in cities, women holding dishes made of clay and wood and tin, women dressed in medieval clothing, in skins, in crudely woven fabrics and styles I had never seen. Among them were my own grandmothers, who had lived and died in Warsaw before I was born. In that same instant, I also knew that if the human race continued, there would be women dressed in fabrics I could not even imagine, holding dishes made of materials not yet invented, who would be standing in their kitchens facing the same problem. Women who had not yet even been born. They were there too, Rachel. In the blink of an eye, alone in Herbert's kitchen, I was in the company of women across more than 5,000 years. And too, at that very moment, all over the world, there were women asking themselves this very question in every human language. Where do I put these daily milk dishes? And I was among them too. Well, Rachel, I almost dropped the dishes. I was so surprised. And it's hard to put into words, but this was not just an idea. It was more like a happening. I had this vast perspective. I knew myself to be a thread in a great tapestry woven by women in the name of God since the beginning. You would think this would make you feel small, but it didn't. I was a single thread, but I belonged. Something I'd never experienced before. And for a few seconds, I had a glimpse of something larger, not only of who I am, but whose I am. It only lasted for a second, but I can remember it very clearly. I feel changed by it. That's a mystical, real experience. So what do we do after the Enlightenment? Well, you know what the Buddhists say. Before Enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After Enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. But I would argue that you do it from a very different attitude, don't you? Before and after. Peace Pilgrim. How many of you remember hearing or knowing of Peace Pilgrim? She was an American woman who walked the country in the 20th century. She says this. I should say, she was really just preaching peace, and she did not go by her given name. She let herself only be known by Peace Pilgrim and only ate what was given, whatever was provided for her. Otherwise, she fasted. She said, the key word for our time is practice. We have all the light we need. We just need to put it into practice. So I invite you now, let's do that. Let us pray. So let us open ourselves now to the underground river that feeds our souls, that we draw up through us, where the truth sparkles like diamonds in the sun, where it lodges a place in our hearts, in our minds, in our lives, where we remember that no matter what, we are here, we are enough, we are known, we are loved, And we are on purpose. And so, we drink from the living water of the underground river, truth, life, oneness. This is our heritage. This is our purpose. This is our destiny. This is our legacy. And so it is. Amen. If no one has told you that they love you, just remember, Michael does.
Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.